be a sponge, and then bring the juice.
By focusing on your improvement, by focusing on your progress, and eliminating any fixed mindset that you may have and acts of perfectionism, then you encourage your own mastery.
On some level, we do what we want to do 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes it may not seem like that, but if I'm choosing to work instead of sleep, what I'm actually saying is keeping my job is more important than sleeping.
I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting beat. What can I do to get over this hump? So mentally, that's when I kind of put that forefront, like, hey, it's either all or nothing.
I like to put failure in quotations because I don't believe that failure is true failure if you're looking at it with the right mindset.
The truth is, the journey to greatness is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus, and every day you have to decide what you value, what you want to pursue, and what you want to achieve. And if you dig deep enough, if you push hard enough, we all have what it takes to be great. Welcome to the Edge of Greatness.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest, author of The Forces of Life and Challenger Deep, Lindsey Hall. Thank you, Lindsey, for taking time to join me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So while I was getting ready for this conversation, I happened to find that you're a comic book fan. So what I want to know is, what's your favorite story arc?
It's so hard. So I go back and forth. I was literally just talking about this yesterday. So it's weird that you said this. I love the Arrow and I love Batman because they're vigilantes. So they are they don't have any real superpower, but it's like their agility and all that stuff that they have. And I like the Arrow storyline a lot. I mean, Batman's my favorite, but I love the Arrow storyline.
So have you seen the new Batman then?
I haven't seen, I was going to see it yesterday, but it was 3 hours long and I did not have the time for it.
So what is it about comics that draw you to them?
I think part of it's the innocence. I think that it makes me feel, it makes me feel like when I was a kid, just like that, nothing really mattered. And also that hope and that you get when you read them, it always ends up normally something good or good overpowering evil. And I really like that. And it just makes you remember that there's good people out there, just because all the superheroes, I mean, they have their flaws, but for the most part, they're striving to be the best they can be. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm a huge comic fan myself.
Who's your favorite?
I tend to lean more towards Marvel.
It's hard. Yeah.
And so I've always been a big Hulk fan. Hulk has always been my guy.
Yes.
Because he's battling that internal struggle between being the monster and letting the monster be what it's meant to be. And I think that's a cool metaphor for how we can go through life. Is we all have this strong person inside of us, but sometimes we're just afraid to let them out and do what they're meant to do. And I think that story is really cool. Plus, as an athlete, I always liked how big and strong and physical he was. So that was a big one for me.
The Hulk's awesome. I collect, I don't know if you know what Q figs are, but they're little figurines of all the superheroes. I just got the Hulk yesterday. So
there we go. Look at that. Yep. I love it. So in your book, I was looking through it a little bit, and you had something that you started the book with a statistic, and it says, according to Wealth Research Group, 98% of people die without fulfilling their dreams.
Yes.
What does that statistic make you feel?
Well, one, when I first read it, and it was a compile up of everything I've been feeling, so it's kind of perfect. It just kind of wakes me up and goes, oh my gosh, am I doing what I want to do with my life? A lot of us say we want to do all these things, but we never even come close to doing them. And so it kind of just wakes you up and makes you realize death is real. Life as we know it can cease to exist at any moment. So what are you going to do with that time you were given? And I think having that is a gift. It's scary, but it's a gift because it makes you live the clock's ticking down. You got to do what you want to do with your life. And you don't want to wait until tomorrow to do it.
So did you immediately make a change after reading that? Or is that something that you found as you were making your shift?
I think it's funny because I think you make the change every single day. I don't think it's a one-time thing, But it definitely woke me up, and I was like, okay. It was mainly when COVID-19 happened. That was my big wake up call, just because like, I don't know how other people are, but for me, I don't think about dying or death. That's not something I choose to think about every day. And so when that's all started happening, especially at the beginning, because, we didn't really know what was going on, and the news was, I try not to watch it. So, but it was really scary at first. And I think like with all that, being said, that was like my starting point. I was like, okay, like something's got to make the change. I read that quote. I was like, okay, it was just like little signs along the way. And each day I tried to slowly make progress towards that. A lot of times it was unintentional. I didn't really realize it because it was just that willpower I had inside of me. And I don't think you can really make a change until you hate where you are. And so for me, I hated where I was. And that's when I was able to. But it was slow. It took time, and I'm still, working on it, because sometimes I can forget to like what my bigger purpose is. So
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a couple little interesting things in there. You mentioned the fear part of it. And I think fear can be either a great motivator or a paralyzer. Tell me about your relationship with fear.
So fear, when I was younger, in high school, even in college, fear was something I kind of liked in a weird way. Like I was like, oh, that's scary. I'm going to do it. I want to go after it. It scares me, so it's got to be good. And then slowly over time, I don't know if it just happens as certain, like when you get older, you become more like fearful of things, or like you realize like how one decision can affect, like everything in your life. And I was like, when I started getting older, I was like, oh my goodness, like there's consequences for everything, it felt like. So I started having a negative connotation to fear. I started getting really scared of it. I developed all kinds of irrational fears, and one of them being flying. And which was weird because I was just such a daredevil when I was younger. I wasn't scared of anything. I really don't know where it manifested. I still try to figure that out. And for me, it became a negative thing. But now I've learned to try to turn it into a positive thing. Just kind of, and I think that relates to trust. I think trust and fear can go hand in hand. So instead of being fearful, I mean, I still am afraid of certain things, but instead of like putting all my energy into why I'm afraid of it and all of that and the outcomes that could happen, I try to shift my mindset of I'm just going to trust, because I can't possibly predict the future. And I forget what movie it was in. I think it's called Fantastic Beast. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but he says something along the lines of, and this is what's helped me with fear and having a more positive outlook on it. He says that when you worry, you suffer twice. And so I think of fear, like when I'm fearful, I suffer twice, because I don't know if that's going to happen yet, the thing I'm fearful of. I don't know that the plane's going to crash in the sky, and preferably not. But when I'm worrying about that all the way up into it, I'm suffering twice. Instead, if I don't worry and then it does happen, well, honestly, I probably won't even know, because it'll be just, it'll be so quick. And I think when you look at it like that, don't suffer twice. And that's really helped me with my mind shift to having more positive outlook towards fear.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because you can't avoid fear. It's going to happen at times, but the way we perceive it, the way we look at it, that can make a huge impact. So what was it about that particular flight that you mentioned that you just answered with, that led you to write your book, the four forces of life?
Yeah. So it was a lot of things leading up to it, but mainly that specific moment. I was sitting there and I had someone with me, and I was just breaking down. Like I couldn't even think straight. I've never had fear just consume me. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that, where it was just, me either. And that's why I think it was so, I don't know if you want to call it like a panic attack maybe, or what it was. And it was so weird for me. And I had seen like people suffer from these things, but I have never experienced it myself. And I couldn't even like pray or think, or, because everyone's like, well, just pray. And I'm like, I couldn't even do it. I couldn't even get words out of my mouth. I was so scared. And I thought about how much time I had wasted leading up to the flight. Like I probably wasted a good month at some point each day, maybe an hour, like freaking out that I was having to fly. It was so weird. And I couldn't understand. I was wasting so much time in my life. I know it was just an hour, but that really adds up. And that's an hour that was wasted. And after the flight, because I obviously had to take a return flight, I did the same thing. I was worrying about it. It was in the back of my mind. And when I got home, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I do not, it's okay to be afraid of things. Like, it's never going to be fully erased, my fear of flying, but you can learn to cope with it and have a positive outlook. And I just started thinking of how, although that flight was one thing, I realized how I did that in other areas of my life. Maybe it was being scared to speak, or honestly to be an author, because that's something I always want to do, is write my own book and speak and do those things. But I was so scared of like what people think, or I wasn't qualified. And I was just thought to myself, why am I wasting all this precious time worrying and stressing and being afraid? How can I overcome this? And I can't be the only one that feels this way. And then it kind of led into my journey of, okay, I went through X, Y, and Z to get to where I want to be. I'm still not necessarily there, but I wanted to share my story and the struggles and the setbacks and adversity I have experienced along the way, because so many times between fear and adversity, I really just wanted to give up. And I never thought it was going to get any better. And even writing, so when I was about to release this book, I had found out I had the surgery on my leg, which I was like, okay, fine, week recovery, I'll be right back into the swing of things of marketing and everything. Well, then I ended up getting a blood clot in my leg, and that scared me. And I was like, for me, I've always been a healthy person, athlete. And when they told me it, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to die, even though that probably, I mean, it's serious, but once they catch it, you're going to be okay. You get on blood thinners. But for me, it was hard to wrap my mind around that. I kept focusing on that what if, and I wasn't listening to my own lessons in the book, like to this stuff's going to happen. Drag's going to come and try to drag you back, keep you from getting to your goal. And I had to remember those lessons. And then it felt like I got an infection, then something else happened. I found I had a blood clotting disorder. It was like all this bad news kept piling on. And even during that time, I had to find a way to pull myself out of it and keep moving forward despite all of this. And so it just reassured me even more of why I wanted to share this story. And it was one flight home, like you were saying, that really led to me wanting to share this book and my story. So.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love that. That's awesome. And so it sounds like you've dealt with quite a bit of adversity recently when it comes to dealing with the fear aspect internally. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think adversity has to come from an external force, but sometimes just the way we feel can really shut us down and cause us a lot of heartache and struggle.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people who are maybe afraid to put themselves out there, getting on the uncomfortable side of things where they have a story to tell that they think that could be beneficial to somebody, or they want to start to get out in the public eye and speak? How would you direct them to start to take those steps?
Well, I think one thing, which there's a few things actually. So one of them would be find someone, and I know a lot of people say this, and you're like, well, I don't know anyone, right? Like, I don't know anyone who does what I do. Find someone that is doing or what you do or is where you are, even if it's a famous person or someone you really admire, and take that chance and send them a message on Instagram, email them, do whatever you can to contact him. Because so for me, one of my favorite authors was John Gordon. I don't know if you're familiar with him. I really loved his books. I loved his parables. I just thought they were awesome. And I was a general manager at Planet Fitness for a few years, and I really used his books to apply leadership. And when I moved down here to Florida, I had no clue he only lived like 40 minutes from me. And I didn't actually find that out, I don't think, until I messaged him. But I was just sitting there and I knew what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to be around people who were doing the same thing I did. I needed to be around like-minded people. And I had no clue how to write a book or publisher or how any of that works. And so I messaged John Gordon. I just took that leap of faith. There was something tugging me to do it. I messaged him. He responded back within 5 minutes. I couldn't believe it. And one thing leads to another. I get hooked up with this lady named Amy P. Kelly. She's so awesome and wonderful, which led me to Tammy Matheny. And it was just crazy. So that's the first advice I'd give, because it worked for me. And I just put myself out there because honestly, I had nothing to lose by reaching out to him. I mean, worst case scenario, he wasn't going to respond, or he might have just not had time for me. So I would definitely recommend that. And two, I think you need to throw away the idea of whenever you go out to set out to do something, I think sometimes we can think it's going to be all like rainbows and butterflies and easy. And for me, I don't know if it's the book The Alchemist, but he makes a comment saying that the whole world conspires to help you get to where you want to go, or something like that. And I think sometimes we take that the wrong way. Like, yes, the whole world conspires to help you get there, but it's not always what we think it's going to look like. So it's actually the world helping you is tough lessons. So like setbacks, adversity, challenges. And I had to figure that out the hard way, which is, I thought the whole world was going to conspire to just like lift me off and, throw me to my goal. But that's not true. Helping people is a lot of times the tough lessons and all of that. So I think having that mindset going into it. So reaching out to people, knowing, okay, this isn't going to be a smooth ride, but that fire burning inside you is what will keep you going. And also time's ticking, I hate to put it like that, but live like the clock's ticking down. That's what helps me write my books. That's what helps me focus and get to where I want to keep going to where I want to go. Is living that way will really help you, because if you were to die tomorrow, was it really that big of a deal if you just talked to, like, put yourself out there or made a Facebook post of, or a blog post sharing your lessons or sharing your message with the world? Just do it, because at the end of the day, if you're on your deathbed or you die tomorrow, you don't want to live with that regret that you didn't share that story inside of you, because each one of us has a story inside of us waiting to be shared, or a book to be written, or, you know, even singers and stuff. That's so scary, but they put themselves out there anyways, you know? And so I would just say, just do it. I know that's simple, but also know it's going to be hard, and reach out to people to help you along the way, because you can't do this life alone. We need a tribe. So
I love that you mentioned the book, The Alchemist, because I read that recently this year. And then I pass it on to one of my athletes. And I'm actually in the process of changing my gym name to Alchemy Sports Performance, because
I love that.
It resonated so much with me, because you're right. It is conspiring to get you to where you want to go, but it's not giving you a clock on when you're going to get there. And
Right.
sometimes you have to deal with those lessons along the way to be prepared. So when your time does come and it does deliver you to your destination, you're ready. Because if you get there today, you may not be ready to take that or to handle that. So
I like that you said the preparation. That part in my book, I talk about there's a waiting period in our life where, when we're going towards our goals or anything in life, where it feels like nothing's happening, you're not hearing back from anybody, maybe your books aren't selling, no one's buying your songs or whatever it is. And that period like makes you question everything. Like, am I where I'm supposed to be? I should just give up. This is punishment because I'm on the wrong path. But really, it's preparation to prepare you for where you want to go. Because honestly, during the time when I thought I was ready, had I written a book, had I tried to speak, probably wouldn't have went so well. You know, I wasn't ready to do it. And so I agree, like, preparation, it prepares you for where you're supposed to go, whenever that time may be.
I love that. And so in your book, you are, I don't know if it was your book or on your website, you mentioned that you reached out to, now I know it was John Gordon. That was the person that you reached out to. What kind of relationship has that been for you, as far as a mentorship situation or a guidance situation? What kind of stuff has he given you on your journey?
Yeah, so it was kind of immediate. He handed me off to Amy P. Kelly on his team. And I think he just thought like we were more like compatible, relatable, you know, in that sense. So I was able to start out with her and just talk to her, pick her brain, get the chance to just connect and form a friendship with her. And then that led to me and Amy doing like, it's called Godfidence Retreat. We did like something like that together. And that was just speaking, helping people however we could. And then it in return turned into something called the Positive Leadership Project, where Amy just, we find different people that could benefit from a positive word and we help them out. And then that also led to so many connections with like Tammy Matheny, Petra Krebs, a lot of different people. And also in return, then circling back to John, I started helping John and his partner, Daniel Decker, out. So I just kind of help with any like marketing, like clipping podcasts and stuff like that for them, or anything that they need as far as like spreadsheets and all that behind the scene fun stuff. So it's led to a cool, you know, little relationship there to learn that back end of things. So
I love that, because I've had a few conversations with people who have had a connection with John. He's one of the guys that I would absolutely love to have on this podcast at some point. But every time I hear a story about him, it's all very similar, where I just randomly reached out and he immediately gets back. And his message is so true because he lives it. And that's an example of that, how quickly he just gives back to people. And I think that's such a special thing. I just wanted to make sure I said that, because I think it's really unique.
Yes.
You mentioned that you were working in management, and then eventually you took the shift and jumped away to start to write. What changed to give you the confidence to take that leap?
I think you get, like, you know, I kind of said before, you know how I said you got to kind of hate where you are. At this point, I was starting to feel uncomfortable where I was. So I had worked really hard there. I absolutely love that company. It's so great. It embodies and all the values I ever wanted in a company. And it had core values, mission statements. But they're like John Gordon says, he said, everyone can have a mission statement, but not everyone is on a mission. And Planet Fitness was on a mission, at least the franchise I was under. And I think when I was learning everything, I was soaking everything up. I would love the impact I was having on, you know, my employees around me, and vice versa, the impact they were having on me. And I just started to feel, I remember the day it happened. I woke up and it's kind of like I like snapped out of this fog. Like I was in this like trance I didn't even realize I was in, like doing the same thing every day, all that stuff. And I woke up and I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I where I'm supposed to be? And that was a scary question to ask myself, because I thought I had my future all mapped out. Like, this is where I was going to be. This is where I was going to retire. I move up, corporate, all that stuff. And it was really scary having that thought, I remember. And I kind of pushed it off to the side because I was like, oh, no, I don't like uncertainty. I don't want that. And eventually I just started getting so uncomfortable. Like every day I showed up to work, I was like, it wasn't that I wasn't liking it, but I wasn't, in a way, I was like, oh, I started finding myself finding that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, which was also scary for me, because I always said if I won the lottery, I'd work at Planet Fitness for free. I genuinely loved it that much. And so I kind of was just like, okay, there's a problem here. Like, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. And it took a long time, a lot of conversations with myself, with my family. But eventually I just said, okay, I got to pull the cord. And I had confidence in the feeling I was feeling. And I had confidence in myself, knowing that I will do whatever I got to do to figure out whatever it is that's making me feel this way, like whatever this dream is inside of me. And I honestly didn't even know what I was writing at first. Like, I knew I loved reading, writing, and leadership. I just didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know for certain I wanted to write a book. I didn't know for certain I just wanted to be a speaker. I just knew I couldn't, if I stayed where I was, I would never figure it out. So I took that leap of faith and I quit. And it led to me kind of, almost, if you want to call it, like a spiritual sabbatical of kind of jumping around, figuring out what I wanted to do, which I was always so anti people jumping around to different things. But honestly, you do have to do that to figure out what you want to do in life. Like, I don't think there's ever really a clear path or a clear career just for anybody. So whenever I came to those terms and I quit, that allowed me to go here, here, and here and be like, okay, I like this, I don't like this, and have that. I almost came to like my end point where I was like, okay, it's writing for me. So I just took that leap of faith because I felt uncomfortable and I had confidence that I would do whatever I had to do to figure it out.
No, I love that. And I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that life tends to get routine, and it's really easy to get stuck where a week goes by, a month goes by, 6 months goes by, and you're like, what even happened?
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody to have like maybe a self-check, or what was it that, I mean, you said you just woke up, but is there something that we can do to help people kind of navigate that fog and that monotony of day to day?
That's a really good question, because I always like to say things like, we'll do like a daily, reflection, or maybe a weekly reflection. And I think those things are good. But honestly, I think it's just each week maybe planning something different, waking yourself up out of that routine. And that's something I try to do, because even recently with having surgery and just kind of sitting in the bed, I found myself doing the same thing every day. But then I was like, okay, no, I need to plan this. I'm going to plan this time to do this, or this time I'm going to sit and meditate, or this time this week, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this book. So I think setting up small goals, minute goals along the way, because those little things can really, help wake you up. Honestly, and maybe it's unpopular, but I would just say reading a book like every month or every week. You have no clue what you're going to pull out of that book or what lessons you're going to learn. And it really does cause your mind to shift from this world to like the book, a different world. If you like, you transport somewhere else, and that breaks up that monotony and gives you space to kind of be like, figure everything out. It gives you that break in between. I think that's why I like comic books and the superhero stuff, because you jump from this world to that, to that world, and I love it. And it makes me feel so creative and alive afterwards, after I read comic books or I watch, the movies and stuff. So,
yeah. So you mentioned that you started to set some things up for yourself to break up the routine. Since you were stuck right now, you don't have a whole lot of options. What are some of the things that you added into your day as breaks, or to break up the monotony?
And some of it's super simple. So what I do is I'm on the second floor, so I can't really like crutch downstairs a bunch and all that. But I go out on my balcony and I just take 10 minutes or however long I can tolerate, sitting out there. And I just sit there in silence. I don't bring my phone with me. And I just allow myself to be. And I don't force myself to have a clear mind. I don't force myself to be in this super spiritual, meditative state. I just am what I am in that moment. And I think that's a big thing, not forcing yourself to be anything, and just enjoying whatever it is. So I just sit out there, and that breaks it up. Even if I don't feel like it, it does do something for me. Also reading, like I said, huge for me. I'm trying to make sure, even just a little bit, I'm reading a few pages, of some sort of book every day. And also just writing in my journal. A lot of times I don't even know what I'm saying. It doesn't even make sense, or it's like 2 sentences long. But I just write whatever it is on my mind. Maybe I'm literally just saying what I'm doing. And that really helps to make me kind of break up that, monotony between what I was doing to this. And those are kind of like the 3 things I would say that I do a day. And that really helps. Or just and it's so simple too. I will just say, okay, on this day, I'm going to go to Starbucks and just get a tea or coffee. And because that, for me, it's a lot of work right now to, get in the car and stuff. But even if I'm not, I always made sure that was a priority. Each week I was getting out and maybe just going to a coffee shop, grabbing a coffee and going home. doesn't seem like much, but it really does break up that monotony.
You mentioned leaving your phone when you go outside. How important do you think it is to unplug?
Oh my goodness, it's so important. And I could never accept that fact until recently. I'm always like, oh no, I'm a multitasker. Like I can do 20 things at once. And I would have the TV on my computer, have my phone out, like, and I would be writing and then also like would just randomly get distracted and go, okay, I'm gonna look up this random fact, like something that just popped into my head, which is just stupidest thing. But I was like, okay, I gotta stop doing that. And I noticed when I wouldn't start because a lot of times I'll eat breakfast and I would turn on the TV, just for some background noise. And honestly, it's really important not to do that and to just wake up with a clear mind, clear heart, and just focus on whatever it is you're doing. I think it's just really important to unplug. I mean, our minds really are not capable of being able to do a million things at once and having 100% energy to each one of those things. So after I came to terms with that, I realized, okay, I just have to focus on the task in front of me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think a lot of times we get swept away with, oh, I can do this, and then nothing actually gets done and you're just stuck. You're just like,
yes, that happens to me. That was happening to me a lot. And that was a big one too. I was like, okay, like I'm doing half of all these little things. I was like a master of none. I had like 5 things started, but none of it was finished. So that was huge for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to making the switch and leaving Planet Fitness, what were some of the hardest things that you had to endure during making that switch?
The uncertainty, and money is important to an extent. The paycheck that wasn't steady that I used to have, the insurance, all that stuff, I didn't have that anymore. And that was really, really scary because we have to be honest with that. Like you do have to provide for yourself. And that was and I didn't think about that at first. And maybe that was a blessing because it allowed me to rip that cord. And I don't have kids or anything like that. So I didn't have a responsibility. So obviously it's going to be different for someone that does. But I had to face that, the financial challenge, the uncertainty of everything, the depression that seeps in, and the anxiousness. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I crazy? Why would I quit a job where I knew what I was doing for something that I have no clue what I'm even doing with my life? That caused me to go into a lot of self-reflection and just a huge trust moment, like my whole year, it was just trusting that each thing I was doing was preparing me for the next. And I had to come to this point where all I was focusing on was that hour or the next hour. And then it turned into, okay, I'm going to focus on this day. And then I would just focus on the next day. I just found that I couldn't think too far ahead or even a week ahead, or that really caused me to be anxious and kind of, negative about where I'm going. Because this kind of stuff takes a long time, as you know, like starting a podcast up and all that. Like it takes, like you want to just put one podcast up and then you're the number one podcast. But like it takes like 100 podcasts and marketing and all that stuff and like networking with people to really, get out there, or maybe that one great interview with someone. And so I faced a lot of that along the way, just the uncertainty, financial issues, depression, anxiousness. It was really, really hard. It still can be at times, because it's a lot of comparison too. Like I was really comparing myself to where other people were that were doing what I was doing. And that was really hard. And I became cynical, with my arms crossed, like, oh, everyone's out to get me, that kind of thing. That's a huge thing I don't think people warn you about when you're doing these kind of things, that don't get cynical, don't live with your arms crossed, don't think everyone's out to get you or everyone's your competition, be happy for everybody. Like your happiness for them isn't going to diminish your light and what you're doing, and I think that was big for me too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge piece for a lot of people, is that they think that if somebody else wins, they're losing. And I think that's hard to deal with. What did that whole stretch of things that you were dealing with teach you about yourself?
It taught me I wasn't as great as I thought I was, in a sense. Like sometimes I had a lot of ego, a lot of pride. Like I was like, oh, I can do anything. I'm invincible. Like I never was negative, or, well, I'm sure I was negative, but I was never really a depressed person. I never really got sad. And I always kind of was like, I'd be hard on people that were. I'm like, why are you looking at life that way? Why are you living so negative? Or I couldn't understand anxiousness. That's just something my mind wasn't wired that way. I don't know if that's because of sports and they give you that military mindset. And also my manager, my regional, was like that. So he instilled that in me too, which I appreciate because it helped me, get through hard times. But it helped me realize you're not as perfect as you may think you are, and you're human and you're going to feel these emotions, and it's okay not to be okay. And it helped me realize that we all have things we're going to work on, and to be vulnerable about your journey to other people, because a lot of times I wouldn't show my weaknesses. or I wouldn't share with people when I was struggling. And it made me realize that how important it is to do that. And it also showed me that we're all stronger than we think. We think we can't handle things, but we really can. You know, you don't get more. I struggle with that because I don't think you can get more than you can handle, but sometimes I think you kind of do, because it breaks you down and it makes you, you know, become even stronger because of it, even if you do fail. And that's, yeah, it just kind of taught me that, you know, we all have our flaws and our issues, but that's okay. And just be whatever it is you are and help other people along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's the big thing, is that you definitely don't get more than you can handle, but you should be stretched, right? You should be at the verge of like, this might be too much.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to make this happen in this moment. I am uncertain at the moment. So I think that's what you're trying to say there, is that you were getting more than you were comfortable with, which means you were forced to grow. And I saw something interesting that you posted. It said, success is a bad teacher, failure is a great one. And I feel like this journey for you had that moment where all of a sudden now you're being thrust multiple obstacles, which means you're going to face some failure. What's a critical lesson you've learned through those failures?
That's a really good question. A lot of these are even helping me grow too. These questions you're asking, it's really causing me, I haven't had to answer some of these. They're really good. The most critical one that I learned, honestly, it would be the fear thing, you know, definitely, really honestly. Like, I had to deal with that recently again. I've been dealing with that health-wise and other reasons. And it's just, all that matters in life is that you're a good person and that you try to be the best that you can be, and you help the person to the left of you and to the right of you. And that's it at the end of the day. Like, it's not worth worrying and stressing and freaking out and being embarrassed or insecure or nervous to share yourself with the world or to write the book or sing the song or whatever it is. And it just, that's the biggest lesson I learned, is just trust. Even then when you don't feel like, you have to trust in something. I mean, you can't trust in nothing. Like, even with like when all the things going on in the world or whatever, like, you have to trust in, whether you want to trust in the president or you want to trust in your friend, whatever it is, you got to trust in someone. So it's like, I'm going to trust in myself and my abilities that I've learned along the way, and just in that I'm going to always be okay no matter what. And I cannot freak out every time something little happens, because we don't have enough energy to do that. And so that is the biggest lesson I learned, is just rethink about your small, it's almost like it's your bigger purpose, actually. Just be a good person, work hard, and care about the person left and right of you. And don't let fear hold you back from anything, because you'll never be ready and you'll never not be afraid of something. So
yeah, no, I love that. I love that a lot. And something that I want to shift gears just a little bit away from some of the fear stuff and more towards your writing a little bit. I'm a big fan of learning and understanding process. So what I'm curious about is, when it comes to your writing and creating, what is your process for that?
So I tried the like traditional ways of people doing like the flow charts, or, you know, like putting your big idea and then, you know, writing your different chapters and then breaking away from that. That didn't really work for me. I tried a lot of different other things, but for me, it's just getting the pen to paper or typing. Like, I just start writing whatever I'm thinking. And I wake up in the morning. I try not to have any distractions. I try not to log on to my social media, and I have to write first thing in the morning. And I can't do like a midday writing. That's not my thing. It has to be when my ideas and thoughts are fresh. I open up my Word document and I just start writing, and I have a blank one next to me, like a piece of paper and pen. It helps me to go between the two. I don't know why it is. I think those are more of like my side notes. And I just write, and I really do not have a clear idea of where I'm going with it either. And I think that actually helps me more. And I don't go back and edit. I don't do anything like that. I wait until I'm all the way done. And then I go back and piece by piece, make the adjustments along the way and look for, my biggest thing is the indiscrepancies between storylines. Like, I had one actually when I first published it. It was, before I released it to anyone, I think it said something about the springtime, but then I was in the fall time I went. And I was like, okay, you cannot do that. So like, you know, that's kind of my process. I mean, I just write. It's nothing too crazy or over the top. And I know it's probably not popular for a lot of people, but it's worked the best for me.
I'm actually really glad you said that, because that's my writing style too.
Oh, awesome.
I literally had this conversation. So I work with a guy in training that he's an author. And so he's very structured, very organized. Yeah. He writes, then goes back and edits, and then writes and goes back to edit. And it's his process. For me, I'm like, if I go back to edit, I'll never finish my story.
Me
The
too. I'll
second
change it.
Yep. The second I start to read it, I'm like, it's over. We're not doing that anymore. And so I literally just sit down and write, and there's like run-on sentences, misspelled words. It's just a mess. Like the first time you read through it, I'm just like, that's not even English. That's not going to work.
Mine is the same exact way. Like I went back and went, oh my goodness, like this is so bad. Like I don't even think I put a period for 2 pages. Like it was just like that bad. But honestly, that when I go back and I chop away at things, like at the beginning, I'm like, oh no, this is it. This isn't it. Or I get discouraged, or I don't know. I just cannot go back and read the story. I don't know why that is until I'm all the way finished. I'm glad you're the same way, because almost everyone I've talked to has like a structured process, and I'm just like throwing paint at a blank canvas.
Yep.
So
no, that's 100% how I do it. And I'm really glad actually I found somebody else who's like that, because I agree. Everyone else is like, dude, if you don't have a plan, you're never going to know it. I'm like, well, I'm screwed up. This is never going to happen.
I was like, well, I'm not cut out to be an author. So this is great. But Ernest Hemingway, I think he was the same way. And he said that his editor couldn't stand him because he would give him because normally before you go off to the editor, you want to make sure it's almost perfect in a sense, but he would just give it to him just like how we write, run on sentences and everything. He's like, look, that's what you get paid to do. You're an editor, edit the book. And I was like, well, I like that, because that's how, if I ever have an editor, that's just how it's going to be, because I just throw it all together. But there's no right or wrong way. So
no, yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I actually paid for an editor for my last book, because I was like, you know what, if I'm going to put it out there, I want it to be clean. I want it to be done right. And I sent it to her, and she sent it back. And when I looked at it, there was like 5,836 notes. And I was like, oh, sweet Jesus, this is going to take forever, because I cleaned it up, but I didn't clean it up. Like I just kind of did a once over, and I was like,
that's what I did.
Yeah, I don't want to keep looking at it. I don't want to change anything. Here it is. Give me your feedback. So, what I want to do now is I want to give you an opportunity to connect with some of my listeners. Where can they follow what you're doing, read some of your work, connect with you, and follow your journey from here?
Yeah, well, so a big one, just sending me an email is great too. So planetlindsey23@gmail.com, and it's Lindsey with an EY. And then also my Twitter, it is Linz, Linz Hall, and then 11. And honestly, just following that, it'll direct you to my website, my books on Amazon, and then also I think I already said my blog, my website, my blog post, and then I think it also has my email in there, so you can get in touch with me as well.
Perfect. I will make sure I include all of that in the show notes.
Awesome.
I've absolutely enjoyed this conversation. It's been incredible. Thank you so much again for taking time to join me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoy being on here.
Absolutely. Hey, as always, guys, keep reaching for the stars. Fall flat on your face, but remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. If you haven't yet, please take a minute now to subscribe and review our show. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But remember, no matter what happens, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.